He is from UCF, the School of Visual Art and Design. He specializes in video game history. So he's going to be leading the discussion today, and I'm going to hand it over to him now. I also have our panelists who are going to introduce themselves as well.
Thank you, Linda. I didn't even do anything. All right, hope you're all excited today. I mean, who's not excited to talk about video games? Yes, everybody should be very excited right now. Okay, I'd like our panel to introduce themselves. If you could just give a brief, around 5 minutes, who you are, what your background is, and what your interests are, and we'll start from left to right. Is that okay?
I guess that's me. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gerrard Merritt. I'm the CEO and owner of CelleC Games, Inc. We design and develop K through 12 educational games, all based off of Common Core, as well as educational games for adult learners, so simulators and things of that nature for the adult side.
Lisa Pineda, curriculum development for STEM CMX. We use motorsport simulation to teach STEM to 5th through 12th graders. And
Okay, my name is Lisa Pineda. I'm the curriculum developer for STEM CMX, and we use motorsport simulation with iRacing.com to teach STEM to 5th through 12th graders.
Thanks for coming, everyone. I'm Matt Marino from UCF. I'm in the College of Education and Human Development. And I'm here today just to share a little bit of experience with you. For the last 5 years, I've been developing STEM-related video games, and we implemented them in 14 states with about 2,000 kids across the country. So I'll share some of the findings from that study.
My name is Jay Leboff. I'm the owner of Hot Seat Chassis. We build flight simulators and driving simulators. We have developed and have gotten involved with several school programs in the metropolitan New York area, where we're developing STEM labs using flying as a visual learning tool. And so when we fly, we use geometry, trigonometry, physics, geography, topography, meteorology, and astronomy, all wrapped into a thing that we call the flight plan.
Good afternoon, my name is Gunnery Sergeant Osmond. I'm a reserve member of TRASYS, which is the simulation development group with the Marine Corps. My job is a robotic systems specialist. For my civilian side, I'm a military training specialist with specialization in simulation, mostly through ground-based training. So my Abrams trainers, Bradleys, and dismounted infantry, and driver trainers for the Humvee.
Thank you very much. Okay, if you don't mind, I'll start the first question because I've had this on my mind for a while now. Just for the general education of everybody in the audience, can you each tell me a little bit about how has the perception of simulation and gaming and education changed during the tenure of your career? Have you seen a change in perception from how simulation and games can be used in education, or just what is the general feeling out there right now? Just address that.
In the military specifically, when you start talking about gaming, a lot of, I'll say, our senior members are a little bit terrified of the idea of using a video game to teach someone a specific skill set. More and more that we see them actually making use and getting out and trying these things and seeing that the training expectations and the goals that we have for training can be accomplished through off-the-shelf options. You start to see some excitement coming onto that. You also start adding in the fact that I can use an $800 laptop to train something that used to cost me $240,000 an hour to do, and I don't have to worry about blowing someone up. You start seeing some exponential smiles come out from the command staff. So for me, it's been a night and day over the last 7 years.
Well, I'm probably the least experienced to talk about this subject. But what I have found is that if you look at the group of kids in a classroom, you sort of can divide them into three categories. You have the group in the middle, where you teach them pi r squared, they remember pi r squared, you give them the test, they pass the test, and they move on. Then you have the group to the right, and when you teach them pi r squared, they say, I got that, now teach me something I don't know. And the group to the left is the group that I'm the most interested in, and they're the ones who don't respond to the sort of traditional learning environment. And the idea for us is to use visual learning as an instruction tool, and flying seems to be something that they all like to do. It's very engaging. Visually, it's terrific. And we've had very, very good results with wide spectrums of kids, ADD, autistic kids, a wide variety of learning issues that seem to disappear when we use flying as a visual learning tool.
Thanks. I would say kudos to the military for starting this off, because when I was trying to get funding to do game-based research in 2006, 2007, 2008, I had people in Washington, D.C. telling me I was crazy, and they wouldn't give me any funding. And then in 2010, I think something happened in Washington and people woke up, and we've been continuously funded to do the types of research around gaming and education since that time.
Well, personally, I've been involved in simulation for about 20 years with flight sims, and about 15 to 16 years with Pinellas County Schools. So I've noticed with being a mentor and tutor for STEM that it seems like the United States especially really focuses on the CD students. Yeah, they're really good at just getting diplomas and GEDs, where my focus is on the really gifted and talented and the really struggling. So like you're saying, the ADD, ADHD, behaviorally impaired, all those labels, they totally go away. And what we've done in the last year with developing STEM-STEMX, the one thing that was difficult for me, that the gifted and talented was easy. They're usually from higher income families, and they have a lot more life experience, so it's a lot easier to teach different things like flight sims. When I would get those kids who are behaviorally handicapped, the kids in the homeless shelter, the kids in foster care, and I was so excited about NASA and flight simulation, and I would talk about the G-forces and about when you're taking off an airplane, the big blank stares. What are you talking about? When you're going up in an airplane, and that was about 10 years ago, I realized these kids had never been in an airplane. They've never been out of St. Petersburg. They've only been on a bus. They've never been in a fast car. So I was really having all these blocks happening. So when I actually found out about STEM, about iRacing, everyone's been in some type of vehicle, so they can understand tires, they can understand grit, they can understand going up onto a bridge. So that was the one thing that I've noticed in the last year, that barrier is totally gone. I had one camp we were teaching that we had kids from the homeless shelter, and we had kids that were children of 2 doctors and gifted and talented. They were able to compete on equal ground on the racetrack. And we started with the other thing that we're looking at is males and females being on equal footing, and as well as minorities. It seems like girls, the younger you get them, the more that they think they can do it as good as a boy. But as you get older, they start thinking it's a video game, and video games are for boys. So the earlier we can get them into gaming and using the motorsport simulation, the aviation simulation, I believe that we're going to have that gender gap shrink, because in the Soviet Union, they've been using simulators for their space program forever, and they have a lot of males and females, and there's a lot less of a gender gap than the United States.
Excellent. What we have to also understand is that the demographics has changed from students of yesteryear, where you can give them a book, 4 hours, they read it, they'll take a Scantron test. Kids today, they don't do that. They don't even like that. They want to be engaged. They want to be immersed in the learning experience. When you look at the VARC model and other different multimodal models, students today, they want to learn and then apply it immediately, so they can see the impact and the effect of what they've learned. And that way, it retains a lot more than just giving them a piece of paper or giving them a book and then saying read, and then going off and then they forget it and they don't retain it. So games are a great way to do it. It's a great way to create repetitive learning, as well as, when we talk about Common Core, we're also looking at metrics and being able to capture what, and as well as assess what they've truly learned and understand.
Thank you. And of course, as you're speaking, if you have something to say, panel, just, raise your hand, and I'm sure the person will be happy to toss the mic to you. Are there any initial questions from the floor? I have questions for days for them, but I want to make sure that I kick it out to you occasionally. Are there any initial questions? All right, be thinking, because I'll come back to you. Okay, so what I get from your last responses was that the general feeling towards education and gaming is positive, that people recognize the potential that this has. Would you mind describing some of the current projects you're working on, and what are some of the challenges that you face in these current projects when, can I make a person smarter with this project that I'm working on? What were some challenges, and what are these projects?
Sure. The biggest one that I've got right now is a dismounted infantry trainer. And traditionally, when you think about infantry, you don't necessarily think about the most high-tech folks in the world. For example, in 2003, I definitely learned how to clear a building using a broom handle. So we went through and literally were going bang, bang, you were dead. That was how I was brought up in the Marine Corps to learn how to train. The newer generations, obviously, I can hand just about any one of my guys, insert game here, and they're going to be able to go to town with it. So when I look at how do I make them smarter, the first thing that I have to figure out is what is it that I'm trying to train them. The military uses things called training and readiness standards, and what we have to be able to do, and the biggest challenge that I have as a military personnel, is working with the engineering staff to figure out how to take this very, very military terminology intensive training standard and turning that into something that we can put into a visual representation and actually train my guys and get them to get the right training out of that. So the big thing that I have is I work with on the civilian side, I call myself more of a translator than anything else. I work with a bunch of engineers that are absolute geniuses. None of them have ever been in the military. So when I talk about breaching a strong point defensive position, they look at me like I've got 3 heads. So now how do I take that from what I can talk with the military side and then get that into some sort of ones and zeros that will effectively train my guys how to do it. So analyzing requirements and analyzing what I need to train are the 2 biggest challenges that I have in my particular venue to try and actually get from what I do into a simulated environment.
The biggest challenge that we have right now is just getting the word out. This whole program, what we call Flying Makes Learning STEM Fun, is a brand new effort that has sort of congealed around a program in New York City that I've been involved with for 8 years and a program in New Canaan, Connecticut. And it became sort of clear to me how profound the amount of math and science there is in flying. And so the challenge for us at the moment is to construct the syllabus and rubric and all of the lessons that are key to the Common Core, and to now move that into the middle school and high school educational community, which I have 0 experience doing. And so that for us is the biggest challenge, and we're going to start in 2 weeks down here at the Florida Educational Technology Conference at the Convention Center and see if we can get some traction there.
I would say the 2 challenges that really jump out at me related to gaming have nothing to do with the games. The first is related to the aging infrastructure in our school systems. So we tried to implement our games in one school district. I'll just give you a quick example. I had 40 kids try to log onto a game called Alien Rescue at one time, and I crashed the administration's email, and they threw me out and said, fix this by tomorrow or you can't come back. So we threw all our engineers at it and came up with some workarounds. But that's a primary issue when we try to implement games at scale in classrooms today, because the local area networks and the schools just won't support it. Second issue is related to the teachers. And they struggle because they don't have the basic gameplay mechanics that their students have. And so many of the teachers are uncomfortable taking a game and learning with the students how to use it. So those are the 2 primary challenges. Most of the teachers have really changed their the way they think about that, though, over the last few years. So I think that problem is solving itself as the teachers see the values of games. The infrastructure I'm worried about. So talk to your local people and see if you can't bring some new computers and some new infrastructure into your schools.
Kind of partially answered it last time, sorry about that. But I would say in one word, it's money. You said infrastructure is aging. We actually took our idea outside of the school district because it just wasn't able to handle it. Even here, we took out the power a couple times on Friday. If you were here with our simulators, they take a lot of power. They take a hardline connection, and a lot of schools can't provide that. So money is definitely an issue, so we instead developed a week-long camp so that kids could have this experience and know that it's out there. But I think the only other thing would be what I mentioned before would be the gender gap that happens right around 6th, 7th grade with females, and especially in minorities. I was the only female and the only non-foreign minority when I went to school in calculus. That was just strange. All the other girls, one by one, just fell out. It wasn't that they weren't smart. It's just that they felt like it wasn't for them. So just convincing, having more female role models. I always said that STEM needs to be sexy, so that's where our name came from, as STEM Sim X. It was intentional to kind of be like, we're cool. And they actually have, we did the science festival in Pinellas County, and they have science cheerleaders now. So it's actual real cheerleaders that cheer for science. So I think that's another step in the right direction.
I would definitely say the integration footprint, having schools be up to date is one of the major issues. But what we're doing that's a little bit different at CelleC Games is we're, all these students today pretty much have cell phones. So we're starting from the app side and saying, and making it accessible to all across the board for free, and saying, teachers and schools, you can implement or utilize their phones while they're in class. So we kind of bypass the infrastructure problem because we know that all the students have phones, right? And sometimes budget's not in place for a lot of schools that don't have that type of funding and support. But what we would like to do is create a footprint where we have the apps go through the LAN, connect back home. So now, we can use the school's PCs, we can use your cell phones, as well as parents can log in at the same time, and we're all on the same page. So that's kind of our little blueprint that we're going to try to get around this, this problem, because we see that funding gets tighter and tighter every year.
Just to come back to one of the items just mentioned, I'm on the board of the engineering school at the Cooper Union in New York City. And I go to classrooms and meetings of various engineering events. And I look around the room, and you'll have a room of 30 kids. And 28 of them are boys, and 2 of them are girls. And so I asked the girls, how come where are the rest of you? And the answer to this, in my view, is that you have to start getting girls interested in math and science in the middle schools. And so in the New Canaan Middle School, where we have 4 flight simulators, we're now moving them to the gym area, and when the girls have gym with no boys around, we're putting the flight simulators up there to see if we can attract more girls into the math and science field, because truthfully, I think they'd be better at it.
Thank you. And from my own experience, this question of what are the challenges that we face trying to make games applicable in an educational setting has been something that we've been struggling with and asking since games first became popular back in 1971. It seems to be like the ultimate goal. If we can make them popular, if we can make them attractive and effective, then we'll have a generation of geniuses on our hands. Because just imagine all that passion that people put into entertainment games now. Imagine that going into educational games. I mean, the possibilities are almost endless. So, next question. First of all, does anybody have anything they'd like to add from the audience? Yes, one second.
With the Super Bowl coming up, there's a company called Goldie Blocks, which has created a line of toys that are specifically geared toward girls in engineering. So if you see it on the Super Bowl, please cheer them on.
The gear one that they have is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. It's a great concept. I don't know why it took so long to come up, but
It's Goldie Blocks. My 5-year-old daughter absolutely loves the one that deals with the gears and the
oh,
friction
she's
and
already got one?
everything else.
Very cool.
Absolutely.
Cool to hear.
So we have another question?
Mine's more about curriculum-based challenges or ways you found to get curriculum written either for the gaming platform that you're using or writing the games to match a curriculum. Don't know if everyone is either using existing games to work around or if you're saying, okay, let's get a curriculum to work with this game, or we're saying, let's change the game to work with this curriculum.
All right. That's easy. My team's here, so they can definitely answer that. We look at the Common Core standards, which is supposed to be the new standards for the entire United States of America within the next 10 years as it rolls out slowly in a phased development. We look for proven game designs that have either high downloads, high rates of sales, and we look at those different game mechanics, and then we try to find unique ways to infuse education into them. So it makes us a lot different from when we talk about leapfrog products, for example, or anything from Scholastic's Math Blaster, for example, where some companies feel if you animate a number, that's a game. That's not a game. So kids either don't play it, or they find the pattern to answer it to get 100, or you'll just have the kids who just are totally disengaged. So what we do is that we try to find games that really have solid key game design mechanics, and then we infuse the Common Core curriculum into them.
I'll just say a few things about that too. So one of the actually two of the projects that I had over the last 4 years were funded, one by the National Science Foundation, one from the U.S. Department of Education with this company called Filament Games up in Madison, Wisconsin. And what we did is we took next-gen science standards, which is a great idea to start with, and then I love the idea of pulling from game mechanics that are proven, and then we built games around those concepts. But we really started with the objectives, and I think that's one area in educational video games that a lot of companies have failed to address, is having explicit objectives that the teacher can then map back to their curriculum, So if you don't have that, and you're a teacher who wants to bring a game into your school, your principal is not going to approve it. So you have to make sure you have clear, measurable objectives in the game, and that they relate to assessments you're currently doing in the schools.
The other game that I've come across in the middle schools is Minecraft, and the intensity that the kids, we have, in the New Canaan Middle School, we have a maker lab, an after-school project, and the kids line up to get into Minecraft. And so I'm not that familiar with the details of the program itself, but it seems to be very popular and interesting. And coming back to the teachers for a minute, our goal is to develop a curriculum to train the trainer, because I don't expect teachers to know how to fly airplanes. And so the objective is to, number one, train the trainer, and then number two, give them the curriculum that they can implement in their classrooms.
For my side of the house, the biggest thing that we look for is scalability. A lot of times when we deal with things, we start out with something that we may be training an individual soldier, Marine, or service member to do a specific thing. But at the end of the day, I need something that I can train an entire platoon or an entire company, an entire battalion in some instances. So I need something that isn't going to be able to, that's not going to die out on me as soon as I start adding more than one or two of these systems together. Our biggest challenge right now is most of the time we end up getting capped around 250, which is still not at a battalion level, which is what we deploy as. So for us, when we're looking at developing curriculum, we need to be able to cover what is our TNR standards from 1,000 to 6,000, which is everything from an individual troop all the way up to an entire battalion evolution, and trying to get folks to understand that that's the development scale that we look at is sometimes challenging.
Any other remarks from the audience right now? Okay, I have a question. You mentioned earlier that just because you animate a number doesn't make something a game. And we've talked about how there's so much interest being generated in gaming education. It's what all of your fields are. What is it, you think, about gaming in particular that makes it, that has the potential to be such an effective tool? Is there something unique to that gaming formula that you think is particularly effective, or is it something else?
The biggest thing, there's two things that I see with it. One is the socialization aspect. Most of the time, if I tell my guys to go and read a manual, which is about this thick and tells you how to walk in a straight line, nobody wants to do that. But if I put them into a simulation where now I can have them do it with their buddies and talk a bunch of smack to each other when somebody messes up, that's the engaging part that I like seeing. When I see that stress level go up and one guy's smiling and everybody else is upset at him. So that socialization side is something that I see. The other thing that I see with gaming is that my guys don't realize that they're actually learning something. If I can fool them into thinking that they're having fun versus learning how to do actual tactics and move professionally to an objective, I've accomplished it. They're not out thinking, oh my gosh, he's telling me to do one more drill. No, they're going out and they're doing one more game according to them. But I fooled them into actually learning something. So socialization and not letting them know that they're actually learning something practical, those are the two biggest things that with gaming I see as a benefit.
The things that attract kids to flight simulation is, the first thing that attracts them is the visual engagement of flying a plane. And there is something magical just about that seeing that, because I can put a simulator in any classroom setting and I will have a line of kids all day long. And so I don't know what the definition of why that is so successful. I can only tell you anecdotally that it works extremely well. The second part is very interesting, and that is subliminal training. And I too endorse that concept, that when you take the anxiety levels away, you're able to then reach kids at some kind of a different level than writing things on the board and giving them the fingers to what they should be doing. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I do know that kids seem to become disarmed in a visual training environment, and disarming them, relaxing them, and then being able to train them, I think works. And it works with kids especially who are the most uncomfortable in that traditional learning environment.
I would agree with what both of you said, and I just want to give you an example. So I was a middle school science teacher in a former life, and I used to teach bacteria and viruses as one of the units that you cover in your standard life science class, which it was incredibly boring for a lot of my middle school students. One of the first games that we made was called You Make Me Sick. And what we did is we taught kids to actually engineer their own bacteria and viruses and then infect a person. And through gameplay, you can take them from the macro level where you get to see this animated character named Pudge, and if you're successfully infecting him, you can take the students virtually inside of his body right down to the white blood cell level. And in 17 minutes of gameplay, they get the same content that it would take them a week to cover, if you want to use that term, in your standard class. So that, I think, is the power of a game.
I'd agree about especially the flight simulation also, is that kids nowadays, they are really bombarded with a lot of different things in the media, with graphics, especially the higher level kids. They have computers at home, they have PlayStations, they have Nintendo, they have everything. So you have to have something that just grabs their attention. Most people don't have the whole seat and the steering wheels and all the controls and the really high graphics. It has to be something special. And I know you're probably going to say something a little different with the gaming. You can do some amazing games out there. There's some that we use also in our camp that just to expose them. One of the things we do is inquiry-based, so we talk about simulation and we say, hey, what other simulators do you know about? And some of them know, and maybe after about 10 seconds they're done with their list, and then say, okay, go online now, and let's find some other simulators. Let's find some other ways that we can get experience. We found some amazing ones, and some of the ones I had never heard of, black hole simulation. I mean, there's some really neat ones out there. So computer literacy, just by being on a computer for the lower end, at lower socioeconomic level, they might not even have a computer at home. So just being able to, they don't know what a mouse is. I mean, it's like little things like that, just getting the exposure is really valuable.
I agree with everyone. You know, when we talk about games and you look at the entertainment gaming side, the key fact is that it's fun, right? It's fun. It's very fun. It's very engaging. That's why when you see kids play, they're not going to go eat. They don't stop. They don't go to sleep. They don't go to the bathroom. They can play for 12 hours straight and just blink, right? So when it comes to games, we have to kind of find that secret sauce between learning as well as the fun, which gives you the engagement and the immersion that you want, so you can get the stealth learning and be able to do all those assessments that you need, and for them to retain the knowledge. So, you know, there are lots of benefits of games when it comes to cost savings, when it comes to being able to cross multiple platforms. When we talk about tablets, mobile technology, mobile phones versus building a full simulation, chassis. There's so many different ways that that we can take advantage of this technology.
All right. I'm telling you, I could be here all day with questions for you. Now, do we have anybody in the audience who is looking at maybe going into gaming as a career or is interested in the industry? Okay, yeah, for a number of you. What pieces of advice do you have for these budding designers and people who maybe want to get into this industry and maybe this particular topic?
If you're looking to get into gaming in terms of teaching something, at least on my side of the house, military simulation is gigantic. Learn what negative training is and how to avoid it. I will tell you right now that systems like Call of Duty, while incredibly fun to play, are the bane of my existence. Because I get guys that are coming in that come to me straight out of boot camp and are like, sweet, where's my other weapon? Well, a 240 Golf weighs 29 pounds and each of those ammo cans is 22 pounds. You're carrying another 40 pounds worth of gear. Do you think you're going to carry a sniper rifle on top of it? No, you're not. Not if you want to move. So when it comes to figuring out how to go into it, understand that reading all of these training things or reading whatever the engineering documentation is, you have to be able to pull good information out of that and be able to apply that to what it is that you're trying to train. Just because it's fun doesn't necessarily mean that we need to have it. But you still need to, like we've just got done saying, you still need to make it fun, but keep it realistic. So if you want to get into our simulation world, make sure that you know the difference between what's just fun for the sake of fun versus what's realistic for what you need to train.
I have no idea. I'm on the on-the-job training event here, and I'm trying to find my way through the education through visual learning method. And so basically, I'm making it up as I go along, and so I really can't give you much advice on how to be successful because I'm trying it myself.
Well stated. So I would say if you're interested in getting into the career and you think you're going to start your own startup company, be sure and do your homework first, because there's a lot of great products that are already out there. I mean, I get paid to do research on games all the time, and I'm always finding things that I didn't know about. So be sure you've done your homework, and don't waste a lot of time creating a product when there's already a better one in front of you. You know, be innovative.
I just have everyone raise their hands again, just so I can look at you and just like, how many females are there? Okay. Talk to 2 friends each, and at least get them talking to doing as well. We just went up to iRacing.com headquarters, and it was all males. And they actually, if you wanted to also, like you said about the military, this flight simulation, motorsport simulation, you need the female perspective. Everyone understands that. NASA's known it forever, military's known it forever. You have to have both sides. You'll never think about, oh, we need to simulate this being for a 5-foot person, for example. So there's a little things that, like even like the chassis. You know, we can't get the chassis small enough for some people. It's crazy. A guy designed it. So that would be definitely get more females involved, more minorities. We want as much diversity as possible. With iRacing, they're having a difficulty. It's been posted forever. They can't find a vehicle dynamics engineer. They find coding people that know how to code. They find gaming people that know how to do games. They don't know. They can't find anybody that actually knows anything about engineering that also can code. And so make sure you talk to the engineers, the people. If you're going to design a game, make sure you understand how to intelligently talk to an engineer or a computer programmer, how to explain it. And I would say probably the #1 thing would be to make sure you talk to an attorney, because you want this intellectual property is the #1 way that people steal ideas. So make sure you talk to somebody, make sure you get it in writing, get it patented and everything before you get your idea out there or someone else will take it.
I would definitely say, kind of piggybacking, you know, do your homework. Definitely do your homework, do the research. Always stay up on, you know, what's going on, because what we see today is going to change within the next 3 to 6 months. When you look at the different technologies that are coming out, you know, you have to stay on the cutting edge. You know, today's kids, and as well as just any individual, we always want the latest and greatest. So you definitely have to stay ahead of the curve. And, you know, games are a way to do it, but definitely if you're getting into this industry, you always have to be kind of thinking, you know, kind of a step ahead than the rest.
Actually, I just said that was a perfect segue into my next question, which is we've got, you know, people here who want to get in the industry. Now you said the future, it's going to change very soon. What do you see those changes being? What's going to be the future of education and gaming? Say, you know, how will adults and kids use these games in the next 10 years? How will the military use it, or simulators?
The number one thing that is going on in my industry right now is something called LVCIA, which is live, virtual, and constructive. Basically what we're taking is all of these great things, like if you guys go down to the second floor and see the booth that we've got set up, we're actually tying those type of simulations in with guys out in the real field. So I'm going out in my little PFC out there that's day one out in the field, I'm sticking a GPS tracker on his backpack and saying go forth and do great things. And I'm taking the feedback from that GPS and feeding it into the video game and having all of that actually talk together. So they're talking on tactical nets, they're operating together. What that allows us to do is I can take an Abrams tank out, which I normally am not supposed to shoot around guys on the ground because it's pretty dangerous. I can now take that and simulate that because you're going to do it in combat. I can take the danger out of doing that in a training environment so that I know that these guys have had that experience in real life and in real time when they go out and have to do it for real. So tying together the virtual and the reality of everything, that's the biggest thing that I see coming forward, because that's also going to help out all of our aviators being able to do everything up in the air, $240,000 an hour without dropping a bomb. I can do all of that in simulation now, but I can also have the same effects as if they were doing it in real life. So tying all of it together is the big thing that I see coming up.
We can take a untrained pilot and bring them to about 75% proficiency before they even sit in an airplane. And the ability to deliver that kind of training is a tremendous cost savings. And it's a very big accelerator, because when you actually decide that you're going to go for your first flight training lesson in an airplane, you already know what the cockpit looks like. You've flown the departure plates and the arrival plates for your home aircraft. You've flown the actual plane you're going to fly in a physics model that's correct. And you've learned all of the instrumentation and all of the procedures on how you set the radios and fly various flight plans and etc. And so you've saved all of that seat time for actual flying, rather than sitting in an airplane at whatever it costs an hour to learn how to set the radios. You don't need a $25 million simulator to learn how to set the radios in any aircraft.
Well, I don't have $25 million, so that's great. At the K-12 level, I think that the next big change is going to be the use of haptics and combining those with games. And so we'll be able to actually take a game that a student is playing on a cell phone, and because of haptic technology, we should be able to tell what his heart rate is, what his skin temperature is, and create a portfolio of assessments in real time, so you can see how that kid's responding to problems that they encounter during the game.
I'd say probably a lot of wearables. We've seen that a lot lately. But Google Glass, what is the name, Brian, of the one, Oculus Rift, I think it's called. So things that are full immersion. I know they do it a lot in the medical field as well, where you can perform a whole surgery and it feels like you're actually doing it. I think that's interesting about the heart rate and everything. I'm talking about that. We're looking at actually doing some brain scans of the kids to see how they're reacting on a cerebral level, to see if we can actually, because you can do pre and post test, and a lot of times kids' Christmas tree, it's really, I'm not sure how accurate they are, but I'd say with developing a game that has to do with education, somehow integrating it so they don't realize they're taking a test, so you can do almost like a basic training, kind of find out what their baseline is, and then have it kind of, as it goes along, kind of keep us reassessing it, and to create some type of a graph. It would really help people like us out that are out there going after grants or going after trying to convince school systems to put these things in, if we have data. Right now, they're still old school. They literally are print out a test and you bubble things in, and then you turn it in at the beginning and you do it, and then they want you to print out another piece of paper, bubble it in, and at the end, and they want to see, this is what they were at the beginning, this is what they are now. Oh look, they improved. Okay, we'll fund you. And it's so old school. I mean, we did, when we did ours, we did it on iPads because they still wanted before and after pre and post tests. And it was a little bit better. I just don't believe in pre and post tests, honestly, but we need to have some way. So if you can figure that out to show how they have increased in knowledge somehow. And they had fun doing it. I really like doing also not just, even if they end up at the same level, for example, for me, if there's some kids, like I personally have dyslexia, so I have a really difficult time reading. So having it audio as well as reading is really important. A lot of games leave that out. They have you reading directions. Okay, automatically I feel stupid. You're having me read something. Having somebody speak to me, being able to choose the voice that's speaking to me is really important. Some people respond better to a female voice than a male voice, for example. So those things are really important to integrate in any kind, for me personally, any kind of game design. But that pre and post test is most important, and also the data collection.
So what you'll see in the future is the big key pieces, the system integration of all of those things that everyone's brought up. So the social aspect, the reporting, you're talking about the wearables, but also when you look at everything, you're also talking about augmented reality. AR is going to finally take off, in my opinion, this year, especially with the enhancement of the lenses, screens that we have on all our tablets as well as at home. Augmented reality and all those different things being combined is going to be the future.
Okay, we are almost out of time, but we have enough time for one more question from the audience. If somebody, yes, we'll go in the back and then a final question.
So my question could be a really long one or super short. So I guess it'll have to be somewhere closer to super short. And I just kind of want to know where all of you who have this experience, what you think is the best way to evaluate this kind of technology that you use. Because it seems like people use lots of different ways, and some people don't evaluate it at all. So, or do you have an opinion?
Anybody want to start with that?
The best way that I've found to evaluate anything is put it in the hands of the people that are actually supposed to be getting the benefit. When I get a dismounted infantry trainer that comes out, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find my grunts and I'm going to say, go forth and do great things with this thing. Tell me, one, if you break it, because for us we're known to be a little rough on things, and two, did you actually get something beneficial out of it? So if my guy's the most junior of the bunch is not getting a benefit out of it, I have no need for it because I'm a gunny. I don't need to do that stuff anymore. But I need my troops to be able to do it. So get the people, the end user, get their feedback and ask them what it is that they want to get out of it.
I would have to answer that my sort of fickle finger of fate is anecdotal. And I watch what happens with the children who go through these programs, and we try and track them to see if their performance is above normal. And we've had extremely promising results in inner city charter schools, which one would think would be the most difficult place, and it's turned out to be an outstanding place. And so I just look for the results.
I'd actually like to disprove the notion that pre-post tests are worth anything compared to games, because our research indicates that pre-post tests, like you were saying, are not accurate indications. So I think to test these things, what you need to do is make sure what you're testing is specifically comparable to what's in that paper and pencil test, so that you can say this kid scored incorrectly on this paper and pencil test, but in the game they were able to do that exact same thing.
Could you repeat your question one more time? I want to make sure I'm answering accurately.
How would you evaluate a piece of educational technology?
Okay, so in our, I think I started to answer it last time, just to kind of go away from the school setting. I believe that, especially for the lower end kids, the kids that are in the homeless shelters, the foster kids, the kids that struggle, I want them just to be excited. If they come in and they're kind of just not really engaged, some of the kids are forced to go there by their social workers, honestly. If at the end they're excited and they think that they realize that there's more out there than just school, okay, I might just want them to just get their GED and go out there and become a vehicle, some kind of technician. I think I've already accomplished something. See, a lot of people, I think, in the education field, they think everyone's got to go to college. I don't believe that. My dad was a mechanic. He was in the Air Force, and then he started his own business. And he didn't graduate. He didn't get his high school diploma until he was in his 30s because he was an immigrant. But he's a very successful man now. So if you have that passion, sometimes people come from other countries. They can be low income, but they know that education is important. Then they go for it. or some kind of trade is important, they go for it. A lot of these kids living in the ghetto, they're going to be like, okay, my dream is to have a fancy car, so I got to sell drugs. So if I can get a kid that realizes that there's more out there than the street corner drug dealer, then I've already accomplished something. So that's what I look at, because that's what we do at camps, is just getting kids excited.
I guess the best way for me to answer this is just to say that the learning, the tool, the technology has to be able to work in all mediums, whether it be the lowest socioeconomic or whether it be the kid living in the mansion. It should be able to work across the full spectrum, to be able to capture them, because we all learn differently, right? But just like in a game, we all play it differently. I may be able to finish the game in a night, it may take you 2 nights, but the fact of the matter is we're going to finish. So it's being able to just kind of cross the full spectrum, the full scale.
Keep that over there. Last question.
You mentioned having a good mixture between education and entertainment. Especially in the K through 12 level, have you noticed any shining examples where games have actually been able to achieve a good mixture?
Yes, our games. Yeah, shameless plug. So what we've recognized from K through 5th grade, for example, K through 2nd, kids will play anything, right? It can be the scholastic stuff that we find boring all the way up to the Halo, right? But it's after kids kind of cross that 2nd to 3rd grade where they're realizing, wait a second, I'm learning, that they start to realize, no, I don't want to do this. So the game designs and the game mechanics have to become more complex at that point, meaning we have to put more emphasis in the game designs as the kids get older. So for example, when you get to high school, yeah, it's you really have to have a game that is comparable to a Skyrim, that is comparable to a Watch Dogs, and for parents who you don't probably know what I'm saying, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, your kids will know. Those games have to get that complex. Why? Because high schoolers know, I don't want to sit here and learn, I want to be engaged, and I want to be immersed in my environment. So it definitely becomes exponentially harder as you get older.
I'm just going to say something really quick. Of course, iRacing.com's our sponsors, so we got to give them the plug. It has a lot of different levels. I think that's what you're saying, having different, you can start out just going out and running in ovals. But having the multiple levels of engagement, there's a garage. You can go and change the camber, you can change the toe-in, you can change the ratio a little bit, and you can try different tracks, you can try different cars. So the more things that you can do to make it able to be long play. I mean, some of these gamers that I've kind of gotten into their world a little bit, they have chats and everything, so I want to hear what they're saying. Most of the time they are just chatting. They're just talking and just, running, all of them going to crash into you now. It's fun. But then there's also the serious level, like with iRacing, you can do it for fun, or you can actually join a league, or you can actually move your way. I'm a rookie. I'm proud to say I'm a rookie. But my son started after me, and he put some time into it, and he's one level below professional, and he's 12. And is he here? Right. Oh, he's behind. Okay. He struggles in school, so he was held back one time, and he's dyslexic, and he was kind of giving up on school. Happy to say, since he started iRacing, he's actually got straight A's for the first time in his life, and we used it as a motivational tool. I didn't use it. I mean, he took our camp. He was my alpha tester, and he was a beta tester, and he took it again. So he really likes it, but we also can take it away. So giving parents the opportunity to have games at the home level, having games that parents like us can use to say, okay, it's so much fun and they're learning, but hey, you don't get straight A's, okay, you're suspended by mom.
Real quick, I want to make something clear. Us designing and developing educational games isn't to take over schools or books or the traditional model. It's to give teachers, parents, and educators another tool, another resource to engage students, to bring them to the books, to make them want to go read and go more in depth with the research and things of that nature. So I just wanted to make sure that's clear. I don't want parents to think, well, wait a second, I'll just get an Xbox One and, we'll put educational games and there you go. No, we want to use that as a supplemental way to re-engage kids in the traditional learning process, because you can't get away from that.
I'm going to take my researcher hat off and put my developer hat on, because I play in both worlds, and I'll say that you know, the sexy factor that you have when you go in the entertainment world costs a lot of money. And so if you're going to put the time into building a game that's really sexy, I'm not convinced you get the outcomes that are worth that investment. In other words, if you've got a game that costs $5 and my kid can learn a concept by spending $5, why would I spend $20 to get the super sexy game if the learning games are the same? So that's kind of the conundrum we're facing now.
I would say that self-esteem is probably the most important takeaway that children in school need to have. And what happens, and you know, just from an unprofessional view of this, is that we have a very traditional testing system, and when you have groups of kids who do poorly in that traditional testing system, they get classified as not smart. And what I have found is that that's not true. We have found many kids that are extremely smart who've been classified as learning disabled or other types of labels. What we need to do is change the way we teach the kids, and we need to change the way we evaluate the kids. Because what happens is that when you take a child who has tested poorly, you move them into the vocational school world or whatever track the school systems use, and that's really unfair to the child because we failed to reach them. The education method hasn't reached the child. It's not the child's job to get to the level of the education method. It's the idea of the education system to teach the child. So they've got it a little backwards.
And it's been hit on a couple things here, but one of the big things that I do think is definitely beneficial for anything is the long play that was mentioned. You have to be making sure that whatever the medium is that you're teaching, whatever that system is that you're putting these folks onto, that it's going to be something that's going to be entertaining for more than a week. I don't want to get to, you know, beat the game and then throw the thing out and go to GameStop. That's not what I'm looking for a training material. I want something that I'm going to be able to continue to increase the complexity of that, continue to increase the benefit that the user is getting out of it, and I want something that they're going to continue to enjoy because they're going to be continued to be challenged. One of the big things in the Department of Defense that was just recently released by a study is that we know that our trainers do a great job in training someone to get from point A to point B in terms of their skill set. Do they continue to gain anything once they have hit that skill set that we initially went after? There is no study currently in existence for a single military simulator out there for the ground side that is out there. So our big challenge now is, okay, we've spent gazillions of taxpayer dollars. How do we find out how to make these things continue to get better? One example of that, the Bradleys and the Abrams trainers that we've got, been training guys how to drive and shoot tanks for 20 years on them. What we just did to make this a little bit more pertinent in the real life is we just told them that unless you can pass all of your gunnery tables, which is how we evaluate how good you do on different things, you don't get to get your first live round. No tanker, no Bradley guy wants to hear, I don't get to blow something up until I pass a video game. So they are going to pay very close attention to anything that I tell them. That just gave them a whole new release on how that system is going to be beneficial. All of them are now listening to me when it comes to instructional time. So again, when you're looking at how to develop something, figure out how to make it beneficial for someone to keep playing it. Hit that continue button and do it again.
All right, can gaming make you smarter? I believe the answer is a resounding yes. The process is definitely not without its challenges. It's a complicated one, but I believe the future looks bright. That's all the time we have. Thank you for your participation. Thank you to our talented panel.
Thank you guys very much. That was extremely interesting. Thank you, Nathan, for moderating.